if I couldn't do something perfect, then I wouldn't do it.
Oh.
And something that experience helped me with, that I had to get okay with, was like, the only way to learn is to do something really bad. And then you learn the ways that you did it bad, and then you do it a little bit better next time, because you have to do the thing to learn how to do it. You have to be comfortable doing something poorly in order to get better.
Yeah. So be okay with with subpar work eventually. Maybe not forever.
Right. Yeah. It's not good forever, but it's the only way to get better.
Welcome to another episode of Made to Matter. I'm your host, Adam Landrum, and Made to Matter is all about helping entrepreneurs build what matters, both in business and in life. And I have the great privilege to have guest Ben Robertson on the podcast today. Good morning. Welcome, Ben.
Good morning. Good to be here.
And it might be afternoon or evening, depending on when you're listening to this. But I'm going to do something a little bit different. I'm going to kick off how Ben and I, our paths crossed. And pre-show, we just determined this was 10 years ago. So this is our 10th anniversary ish of Ben and my life crossing. So Greenville, South Carolina, 2015. And I owned a firm at the time called Merge, which would later become Up and Up. And we started a program called MAP. And MAP stood for the Merge Apprenticeship Program. And Ben, if I'm right, at the time, this is like boot camps, or we're either starting coding boot camps or starting or all the rage. And I think it's probably on the early end, actually. And Ben, you worked for the newspaper, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
right.
You were sort of like, I'm not going to do this the rest of my life.
Yeah.
And I'm going to become a programmer. And Ben was looking at a program that was actually across the hall from our office. And I think it was $10,000 for 3 months. Okay, good. My memory's still holding. And so, but we just published this thing where the Merge Apprenticers program was like, hey, you know nothing about programming, or maybe a little bit, you can sit next to our programmer for 3 months. It's sort of like a adult internship, and we'll pay you. I think, did we pay a wild state, like, was it $1,500 for 3 months?
I think it was $1,250 maybe. I think that's what I'm right.
Okay.
So
all right, is around
somewhere in that range.
Yeah, is a solid 4 digits.
Yeah.
solid low 4 digits. But Ben, Ben applied. I talked to him. I could tell he was he's a sharp guy. And I was like, yeah, we'd love to have you join us. And later I learned that Ben's logic was this, which you cannot fault the guy. He said, why would I pay someone $10,000 when I could get paid? So really you got paid, $11,250 or whatever. Yeah. So that's how we did. And then Ben picked it up very quickly. And who's the programmer that you were? Was it Brad Garrett?
No, it was Mike. It was Mike.
Mike Osteich, which was our lead programmer for a long time at what became Up and Up. And but Ben picked it up quickly. I think worked for us a couple years, and then I'll let you pick up the story from there. So maybe chime in on that experience and maybe fill in any holes that I missed there.
Yeah, like a little bit of backstory was we had moved to Greenville, and we had been here about a year, and I had been working for the newspapers in Chicago, and then we moved to be closer to family, and it was miserable working here at the newspaper. So I decided to learn how to code. I quit my job. I didn't have a job. So it was like I got to a point where I felt like I needed to go full time on learning. And I had like one freelance client that, like the first day I took her site down, like within 5 minutes of her hiring me. And but I cut my teeth that way. And so I think I had a couple of months of experience doing, breaking other people's sites before I came to Merge. And so between the stipend and then, the freelance stuff I was doing, and then being able to learn on the side, it was like enough income during that period. And then I had gotten to the point where I felt like I had learned all I could learn on my own, and I really needed to be around other people that, like, because I didn't know how to talk like a programmer talked. I just knew how to write code. and I didn't
Okay.
know how to think like a programmer thought. And so I was being around Mike and Jordan Barber, I think started right around the same time that I was there. Helped me a ton. I think it was those 2.5 years there. And then I left and I went to another agency that was remote. They were based out of Atlanta. And I was there for a couple of years. And then from there, I wanted to switch things up, and I wanted to see if I could do some product work rather than agency work.
Hmm.
Um, and I transitioned to a job for a company called Gatsby. They were like a tech startup based out of San Francisco, and I wanted to be a programmer there, and I applied, and I didn't get the job. But they nicely said, well, why don't you apply again sometime for another position? We filled that one, but apply again. So I saw one a couple months later for a customer success engineer, and I looked at the job description and I thought, well, that's pretty close. That's a cool job because it was basically like work with people who were like me. I was basically their customer. So I
Okay.
would then get to sit on the other side of the table, do training for those people, help them with the product.
Were you like, hold up, were you like original Ben or like, 4 or 5 years of experience Ben?
Yeah, it was 5 years of experience, Ben.
Well, I mean, the people you were helping.
The people I was helping, they were, I mean, a lot of them honestly were more experienced than I was, but our software was so new
Mm.
that I was early in on that tech stack where
Okay. And what's Gatsby do?
Gatsby, it's a React based static site generator.
Okay.
So it's not super popular nowadays. It's fallen out of favor in the programming world. Um, but at the time it was pretty exciting. Had a lot of growth. A lot of people were using it, and a lot of people were using it at the time where they'd have like a WordPress backend or a Drupal backend, but they wanted to use something more modern for their front end,
Hmm.
and so they would make a Gatsby site that would source data from their Drupal or WordPress instance. And I had a lot of experience on the WordPress and Drupal side, both from Merge and Up and the agency after that.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. So it sounds like your story starts with you were willing to bet on yourself when I'm assuming you didn't know much about programming.
No, and also my wife was willing to bet on me.
Yes. Okay. Which has yes. All right. Everybody listen to that. It's very important. The spouse getting their buy-in is huge.
Yeah.
I would agree with that. And our story is similar in that way. When I started Merge in 2001, I took some computer science classes at Clemson, but I didn't know a ton. And we started doing websites. And I actually had a guy from Greenville. I was in Atlanta at the time. A guy from Greenville come down and teach me. I sold my first website, and he came down and taught me how to code in Dreamweaver, and that's how I got started. So there's a little bit of a shared story. There's like, if you're thinking about starting something, it's okay not to know anything.
Mhm,
You can but are you willing to bet on yourself? Like, do you have the confidence that you can figure it out? And
mhm.
you obviously had that confidence. Where did that come from?
Um, I mean, I've always enjoyed learning things. Like that's exciting to me to feel like I'm trying something new or learning something new. Um, and I think I don't know. I think at that time I was so miserable in with my job and where I had ended up, just like my day to day, that I was willing to believe that anything else would be better. It was hard for me to imagine a world where it was worse, but just based on how unhappy I was, and it was affecting like our relationship too. The part that my wife likes to tell is that she said you can either quit your job or we have to go to marriage counseling, and I chose
No,
quitting my job instead of marriage counseling.
that's a smart move.
Yeah. So I think I don't know if it was courage as much as it was desperation, but maybe a little bit of both.
Maybe, yeah, a little bit of both. I love, and I've talked about this, is the change formula that basically, so there's a formula for change, right? And it is your discomfort times your vision. So, if we know that either are zero, then zero, you're not going to change,
Yeah.
right? And so you had a ton of discomfort and you had enough vision of it could be anything but this.
Yeah.
So your vision was at least one, which gave you the necessary thing. And then it takes courage, right?
Mhm.
And you quit your job. You quit your, I mean, so you committed. You burned the boats. You're
Yeah.
like, I'm gonna do this. Yeah. So what was that like? How did you feel? How did your wife feel about this burning the boats thing?
Yeah, I think my wife, I think she felt good about it. I mean, she's always, um, I think we'll get to this later. She's always been the one to tell me before I realize it, like you need to do something different. Um, and she realizes that stuff before I do. I think I had at my job, I had a really good relationship with my boss, which was great at the time. Um, but I just wasn't enjoying the work, and she and she knew it. And I think, yeah, I mean, there was like structural changes in the industry. I mean, it was also a bad, I mean, I think it's been a bad 20 years to be in the newspaper business.
Hey, really quickly, I want to share a quick story of how 30 minutes changed my life. It was about a decade ago where I was sitting across the table from an executive coach, and she asked me a couple simple questions that just gave me the clarity that I needed. I ended up working with her for the next 18 months, and it was a total unlock. It broke me free from being stuck. I grew that business, eventually sold that business, and I attribute most of my success because of this executive coaching. It's why I do what I do. Well, you too can have 30 minutes. You can have it completely free. If you want to just go to my website and go to my services page, you'll find a button there to book a 30-minute call. What if 30 minutes completely changes your life like it did mine? You won't know unless you do it. So I hope you will schedule a call today.
Or bad 30 years to be in the newspaper business.
Yeah.
But that was 2013, 2014. That was a lot of structural changes going on. But I think when I did it, I just felt so free afterwards.
Mhm.
Like it was a burden to me. I felt like it was holding me back. I think I got to, I did a lot of learning on the side. And then it got to a point where I felt like, okay, this new thing that wants to happen, that I want to happen, something has to get out of the way for that to
Yeah.
happen.
Ah,
And
I see.
that was what I remember feeling was after I quit my job. Yeah, I think I quit at the end of September, um, in 2014. So, because I remember I had all of October, I actually just kind of took as like maybe 2 weeks of October is kind of just like unwind and calm, chill out from that job. Um, and I remember that being just a really special time of like, okay, it was almost then that I could kind of build the vision a little bit more
Hmm.
and figure out what I really needed to do. And what the next, just figure out, okay, I, I say the vision, but really it was like, I just need to take one step, today I need to do one thing. It wasn't like I didn't have a whole, I didn't imagine I'd be where I am now 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Um,
So you didn't have a grand, yeah, you didn't have a grand vision, but you could see the next step.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay. And then what was so it sounded like, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it sounded like when you took that time off in October that there was peace or there was contentment. Is that true? I mean, was there fear too, or what was that like?
Um, I don't I don't remember being afraid in that time. I mean, my wife was able to pick up, we didn't have kids at the time, so that, made a big difference, and she was able to pick up more hours at her job. So like financially we were fine, and we were super frugal at that time. I mean, we just hardly spent any money. Um, so we were making ends meet. Um, and it wasn't necessarily that was worrying. It was just like trying to figure, yeah, trying to figure out the next step. But it was a sense of freedom. And then one thing that I remember doing, was I read Walden, which is one of my favorite books. I remember I'd go to Falls Park and I'd read Walden in the fall, and it's just like a beautiful, beautiful time of year. And I've always just been inspired by Thoreau. His sense of like what's the least amount I could live on. What's this kind of like this minimalist experience of I don't need um you know time is freedom.
Mm, yep.
And money is freedom in so much as it gets you more time, but
Mhm.
but not not beyond that.
Yeah. It's sort of funny. It's like almost like money can be freedom, and time is wealth.
Yeah, yeah,
Is
yeah.
the real wealth. So did you I might circle back to the Walden thing because I'm not so I have two questions. Did you start a side hustle or did you just quit sort of cold turkey?
I quit. Yeah, I didn't have any income.
Okay.
Well, let me think about that. I think when I quit, I had one. I was doing like advertising sales, and we were selling some digital marketing products and stuff.
Hmm.
I think, and I was working with car dealers at the time. So I think I had one client that I had worked with, like up in Asheville, that they were interested in like me consulting with them on their like paid search marketing and that kind of stuff. So I did have that, and that was, maybe also $1,000 a month or something like that. It wasn't my full income, but I did for a few months go up there. I think maybe I went up once a week or something like that, and then I would do some work for them, from home. So I had that, and then the other thing that happened was I started trying to figure out how can I freelance, and I looked around on Craigslist in Greenville, and I found some listing, and I don't remember the guy's name, but I called him and we talked on the phone, and I kind of told him my story, and he was like, "No, you don't want to this job that I'm need, like, you don't want to do this." He's like, "What you want to do?" He's like, "You want to go on one of those freelancing sites." He's like, "You're just gonna bid really low. Like you don't have any experience. So just get a job. Just get any job on there that you can get." He said, "And just do that." He said, "And then the next job you bid a little bit higher, and then you bid a little bit higher." And I really appreciated that advice because I did it, and I bid on, I don't know, maybe like 5 jobs or something like that. And that was how I got my first freelance job, the one that I mentioned where I got access to her WordPress site and I took it down in 5 minutes. I don't know if she knows that, but I did. But then I figured out how to get it back up, and then I knew how to both take down and restore a WordPress site.
There you go. There's lessons in
After
that.
that,
Yeah, it's on the job training, right?
yeah. So I think that was within. I think I got that first gig with her like maybe a month into it,
Yeah.
and so it wasn't. I think she paid me $20 an hour or something like that, and it wasn't a ton, but it was enough. It was enough to learn and enough, to feel like, oh, okay, I'm making forward progress.
Yeah.
And money's
But um, I would commend you though that most people are not that courageous to jump cold turkey and usually build a side hustle and they do it for a while. So you're proof that you can do it. But you also had yourself set up because of your frugal living.
we had lived pretty frugally for a while, and I think one other thing I'll add is that like a tendency I had when I was younger was like if I couldn't do something perfect, then I wouldn't do it.
Oh.
And something that experience helped me with, that I had to get okay with, was like the only way to learn is to do something really bad, and then you learn the ways that you did it bad, and then you do it a little bit better next time. Because you have to do the thing to learn how to do it, and you have to be comfortable doing something poorly, in order to get better.
Yeah. So be okay with with subpar work eventually. Maybe not forever.
Right? Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not good forever, but it's the only way to get better.
Yeah. Very cool. All right. So you jump, you do the merge, you get your freelance, you do the merge apprenticeship, work for us, you then were agency Atlanta, Gatsby. Gatsby then gets acquired, correct? Or they merge with
Yeah,
another
we were
company?
acquired in 2023.
Okay. And then you work with that company for a couple years or so?
Maybe 6 months, I think.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it was February. The acquisition went through in February. I was with Gatsby for 3 years, I think, and then we were acquired, and then we went over in February, and then it was September 1st or 3rd or something. I guess September 3rd, I think, was my last day there in 2023.
In 2023. Okay.
Yeah.
So
7 months. Yeah.
let's pick up this, and which often not a rare occurrence when you get acquired, but so pick up the story from there. What happens? What are you thinking? What's next?
Yeah. Before the acquisition, uh, that acquisition period, like prepping for acquisition and due diligence and that kind of stuff, was really stressful. For me personally, was in a leadership position, and so I was privy to the conversations that were going on and was part of some of the due diligence. Uh, but we had to, keep a face going, with the team of like, yeah, we're still, full speed ahead. Yeah, keep doing what you're doing. And it was so hard for me to do that and to know that like things could drastically change, whenever things were finalized. And it just took so much longer than I expected. It was months and months and months of that. And so, and I enjoyed what I did at Gatsby. It was very exciting. I started as the first customer success engineer and then became the director of customer success there and got to hire a whole team. And I liked that process of building the team, but then at a certain point, I stopped getting to do the new fun stuff, and then I was just managing other people doing this stuff.
Yeah.
Um, and then I found that for me was hard because I kind of became like a stress pancake of like, oh, my team is stressed and they bring that up to me. And then, people above me are stressed and they bring that down to me. And then, you're just that kind of middle layer of managing upwards and managing downwards. And so I thought, okay, maybe I need to do something else. And I started looking at job listings, for positions that were like what I was doing. And, as director of customer success was my title. And so I started looking at them and I was reading these job descriptions. I was like, I don't want to do that job. It's like, I'd read it and be like, no, I don't want to do that. And then the more I thought about it, I was like, well, I am doing that job. And I don't want I don't want to do that job anymore.
Yeah, like, wait a minute.
Wait a minute, what am I doing? And so then I thought, well, maybe I'll go back to just being like, front end engineer, front end software developer. I'll look at those kinds of jobs. And I interviewed for a couple of those, and I realized I was like far enough out of the day to day of that kind of work where it was going to be pretty challenging for me to like jump back into one of those roles.
Ramp back up.
Yeah.
Yeah. So real quick, I want to I love the stress pancake visual that you made, and I just saw a headline yesterday that like Gen Z millennials are what are you technically millennial?
Yeah,
If I can
millennial.
label you. All right. So but are really pushing back. Like no one wants management jobs. And it makes sense. It's sort of like you get the crap at both ends, right? Yeah. So so you're really experiencing and seeing that and then recognizing like, oh wait, that is me. Okay, so you're like probably not going to jump back in the program to ramp back up. So then what's your train of thought?
Yeah. Well, when I guess part of the vision I had when I first quit my job, like before I came to Merge and everything, was I remember watching Snapchat come out, and he was a young guy, and I remember that Mark Zuckerberg offered him $3 billion for Snapchat, and then I remember he turned it down. And I remember thinking that was so crazy. One, that like he just made an app of pictures that go away. And then that somebody else wanted to buy it for $3 billion. Just like that's an unfathomable amount of money.
Yeah.
And his response to that was no. Like this is worth more, to me than that amount of money.
And Zuckerberg indirectly taught him that, right?
Yeah.
When Yahoo offered him $1 billion. Yeah.
Yeah. And so that was part of my like maybe my vision board was like one day I want to be able to make money with software. I want to have and my wife and I would joke about what's our $3 billion idea? What's our $3 billion idea? So that was always like in the back of my mind. I never had a $3 billion idea or a $1 billion idea or, even
that you know of.
Idea. Yeah. So yes, so far.
Or that you did. Yeah.
Yeah. But that was always in the back of my mind. I wanted to learn how to program because I thought it'd be satisfying to like at the end of the day see the fruits of my work. And the salaries were pretty good. And then, but I wanted to one day, make software on my own. So I, throughout those years of being, at Merge and maybe not at Merge, but later when I had more experience, I would kind of start things on the side and try to build them, but I wasn't very good at it. And it was challenging. And so, but by 2023, I really had that itch again, and I had been in a startup, and I realized that, they're not all wizards here. They're not all San Francisco wizards that went to computer science school. Like they're just people that try something and they see if it works. And if it works, you keep doing more of that thing. And if it doesn't work, you try something else. And it was this experimental mindset. And our CEO at the time, he helped me kind of work through that and realize that. And I kept, I'd try things and then they wouldn't work and I'd feel so bad about it. He'd be like, we just try something different now. It was not, you tried something and then you just try something else. And over those 3 years, I've kind of built up, I think, experience trying things and seeing if they worked and if they didn't work. And I got to the point where I felt like my instincts were pretty good, where I could tell if something was a good idea or not a good idea. And I could figure out how to make it work, make enough process that people could follow it, but not too much that would smother it, before it got off the ground, and those kinds of things. And so I had kind of come back around to, I think maybe I could start my own business, and run my own software business. And the other things that were going on at the time were, I think AI was, I mean, Chat GPT, whatever. I don't think they had Chat GPT. It was like GPT 3.5 or whatever like that. I don't even think they had Chat GPT until later that year. But I could see that AI stuff was starting to kind of take off. And there was enough use cases where I was starting to realize, oh, this would be useful for me to do different things. And then also like I could build software around this that would, there was a lot of just like niches, I think, that were untapped at the time, that you could just kind of bring some AI into, and then normal people could use it because normal people weren't really going to go out and use AI at the time.
What was your first experience of AI where you're like, oh my gosh, like this is the future, or this, where it really helped you?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I built something in 2023. I don't remember what experience I had before that, but I remember the thing that I built was like I was leading the support team at Netlify, and the thing that I built was like, so a lot of what would happen is like people would escalate a ticket to me, and they'd have like a long conversation with the customer, and then it would get too complicated, or people were having an argument or something like that and have to come up to me to, figure out what to do next. And it was just like so time consuming to read through like, 40 support messages back and forth. And so I built a little widget that could live in our help desk that would send it off to, OpenAI or whoever. And then it would just give me like a bullet point summary of like, okay, here's what happened. Um, and that was super powerful for me to be able to just like, I don't want to read 5,000 words of this topic. Like, I just want to know like where we're at right now. And then I can figure out the next step, because all those details really bog you down. And I remember feeling like, wow, this is really powerful. That that'll every time I did that, it would save me 20 minutes,
Yeah.
where I could just hop in somewhere.
Yeah. And that's cool. So you're even building widgets using it. So, and then what about for programming? When did you see AI like, oh, this is going to affect, programming or impact programming?
Yeah, it was sometime in that year where I was in 2023, where I downloaded Cursor, which was like an AI IDE, like for programming.
What's IDE stand for?
Integrated development environment, I think
Yeah.
is what that stands for. I don't know. Maybe somebody can correct me. But code editor, basically. So it's a
Mm.
code editor with AI built in. And it's super advanced now. At the time, it was like, it would try to guess what you were, it was kind of like intelligent autocomplete,
Mhm.
where you'd start typing like something and then it would try to fill in the rest of the line for you. And that was mostly what I used it for. And that was really helpful too, where, you could even sometimes write a comment, like, here's what this function should do. And then it would just write the function for you. It would kind of autocomplete that. And that felt like magic.
Yeah.
And I was rusty with my programming, so it was super helpful for me, where it was like I hadn't been day-to-day programming, but I realized, oh, I can hop back in and be really productive really quickly, using this tool.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So you see this vision, and all right, so you've left Netlify, you're thinking you want to scratch the itch again of creating a product.
Yeah.
So where'd you go from there?
Yeah. Well, I had decided to leave Netlify like in the summer. Like, I realized I was not happy, but I had a um retention bonus to keep me there for 6 months, and it was enough where I thought it through and thought, yeah, I should stay through this.
I could be
And
unhappy for a little bit.
yeah. And but all that time I just had this document where I just, every time an idea popped into my head, where, and I think I called it ways to make money. I think that was what my thing was. And it was just like, oh, just if I have a little idea, I'll just jot it down. And I've got I mean, I got all kinds of stuff in there. But one of the things that I wrote down was, my son was 5 at the time. He was super into coloring pages, and he'd be like, "Hey, Dad, can you print off a coloring page for me?" I'd be like, "Yeah, what do you want?" "Well, can we get Spider-Man and a dinosaur riding, in a jungle with a leopard?" I'm like, "Okay, I don't think we're gonna find these." Like, "No, Dad, just Google it. You'll find. I'm sure if you scroll long enough, you'll find it." So I'd sit down, and then he'd sit next to me, and I'd show him, the first, and when you do Google image search, you get like 50 results like straight off the bat, and I'd be like, "Well,
Yeah.
it's not here." He's like, "No, Dad, just you scroll. You just keep scrolling. I'll tell you when to stop." And
Anyway, and he'd say, "That one. Let's do that one, Dad." Okay.
yeah, except usually just be like, "No, I can't. That's not the one I want." Just be like, "Keep going, keep going." And I'd have to tell him eventually, like, "Hey, it's a good idea, but nobody's thought of that before, and so it's not out there." And so I thought, that there was a lot of AI image generators at the time. People were doing like profile pictures and goofy styles and stuff. And I thought, oh, this would be a kind of like a cool thing to like be able to make any coloring page that my kid wants. And so that was one of the things on my list. And so it was like a couple weeks after I left.
Hold on.
Yeah,
It's on your list, but you said the title of your list was "Make Money."
yeah, ways to make money. Yeah.
So you're like, if I do coloring sheets, $3 billion idea. Hey, really quick, there's this concept. In order to get to where you want to be, you got to know where you currently are. So that's why I created Made to Matters Diagnostic. It helps you create a baseline where you are over several categories. And once you have that baseline and you work with a coach, you can then start moving and seeing your improvements. You go back 6 months later, maybe 12 months later, take the diagnostic again. You can see the progress that you made. But what's more important once you create that baseline is it shows you the most important things to start working on. I encourage you, it's absolutely free. Go to diagnostic.madetomatter.coach. You can sign up, and in less than 5 minutes, you can get a baseline of where you are so that you can know what to work on and improve on to get to where you want to be. Thank you. Hope you'll end up taking advantage of that. And now back to the show.
Well, so the other thing that happened for me that year was I realized that I didn't need a $3 billion idea.
Okay.
I kind of came back around full circle to realizing like, I don't need more money. I just need enough money, and then the time and that's what'll make me happy. Because I at Netlify I was making more than I had ever made before, and it was great. But then I was starting to have these like dilemmas of like, oh, should I hire somebody to mow my lawn because I'm stressed, I don't have enough time to do it. I really like mowing my lawn, so then I'm just like hiring people to do the parts of my life that I enjoy, so I can do the thing that I don't enjoy.
Yeah.
And so part of the shift that happened for me over that 6 months being there was I just realized like I don't need more and more money. I need more time, and I need enough money. And so that was going in after when I quit that job. That was my goal. My larger goal was I want to work 20 hours a week and make enough money to support my family working 20 hours a week.
Okay. So you can mow more lawns.
So I can mow, so I can mow the lawn, I can work in the garden, I can bake bread, spend time with my kids, I can do, the things I enjoy doing, spend more time on my hobbies. And with my kids, we got, now 4. So there's a lot going on.
Yeah.
And so my number one goal was I would really like it for be a software business that pays me 20 hours a week, or pays me enough to support my family. And I thought I could do that with a software business, only work 20 hours a week, depending on what it was. And I thought, I can supplement with freelancing if I can't make a software business work. And if I can't make either of those things work, well, after a year, I'll have run out of my runway that I given myself, but at least I'll have learned some interesting things. I'll have a good story to tell, and I can go back and get a job.
Okay.
So anyways, I guess that's a long way of saying I had come around to, I don't need to make a ton of money. I just need to make enough money.
Yeah, but I like what you're doing there is that you're determining your criteria for what success is. Like you questioned what success was. And you're like, actually 3 billion isn't success.
Yeah.
Because you saw yourself, I'd imagine, you saw yourself going, you know what, I keep success keeps putting me in jobs I don't like.
Yeah.
Success keeps making me unhappy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's really cool too, Ben, that you're in tune, with your happiness or contentment or whatever you want to call it, and you do something about it. Like when you notice that like there's something going on, you're like, no, time to change. And so
Mhm.
I've just noticed that trend in your life. That's been cool. This idea of I want to work 20 hours a week. I mean, is this like the new, like, I can't help but think like this is evolved thinking, this is, or advanced thinking, or this is like developmental stage. Like, is this the new wealth? Do you think that, and this is why people are like, I don't know, hell no, I don't want to be a manager. I want to do 20 hours a week, make enough. That's rich, is make enough
Yeah.
and enjoy my
I mean,
life.
I don't know. I think most people that I talk to like like their jobs enough, and like having somewhere to go and something to do for 40 hours a week.
Uh,
Um,
Hold on. Do you read any of the the research? Is that's like,
I mean, I read the
30,
research, and when I talk to like my friends and stuff, like
yeah.
none of them want to do what I'm doing.
Oh, well, yeah. I mean, the entrepreneur, which I think you're doing
Yeah.
something very entrepreneurial. Entrepreneurs think everybody wants to be an entrepreneur, and like, no, 90% of people do not want to be an entrepreneur. It sounds horrible,
Yeah.
but I'm just saying the studies are like 36% of the workforce is engaged,
Yeah.
um, which would just tell me most people actually. What, but that's your sample, so I'll let you do your sample.
Yeah. I mean, I also think, I mean, if you just did a broader survey of how many people are engaged with life, like, and
Yeah,
really getting the most out of it, I think you'd see a pretty low number
yeah,
also, where,
similar number if not
yeah,
lower, right? Yeah,
I mean, that was Henry, there's, a bunch of stuff that stuck with me from Walden, but, he said most men lead lives of quiet desperation.
desperation. Yeah,
Um,
that's one Walden thing I know.
yeah,
I
and
didn't know
that's good. That's the main one you gotta know.
yeah, I didn't know it was in Walden, but I
You
knew the
should have,
quote.
yeah, you should have dropped that. Yeah.
Yeah, dang it. Okay, so 20 hours a week. We got coloring pages on your list. What happens?
Yeah, I woke up one morning, like, super early. I think one of the kids got up at, like, 3 or 4, and then I couldn't fall back to sleep. And so I got up and I went to my office, which was in the house at the time, and, just was like, I'll just start thinking about stuff and working on stuff. So I was going through my list, and I started doing some, like, SEO research, search engine research of, like, okay, out of these things that I've got going on, I was like, well, let me just look at coloring pages. Like, what's going on with coloring pages in Google? And then I realized, like, oh, there's, like, I search for coloring pages a lot because I've got a 5-year-old, and I was like, well, there's a lot of 5-year-olds in the world, and there's a lot of people searching for coloring pages. Um, and what I found was it wasn't like a super competitive space to be in. And so I remember finding, like, oh, I could make a page for mushroom coloring pages, and mushroom coloring pages gets like 5,000 searches a month in the US. And
Mushroom.
mushroom coloring pages.
We
Yep.
like mushrooms.
Yeah, star
Okay.
coloring pages was similar. There was like a whole, like, I had this whole list of, like, okay, here are the ones that would be very easy to make and rank for. Here are the ones that would be easy to make and rank for, and then here are the ones I'm not going to even touch right now because I'm just getting started. But I realized, when I realized it was in, when I added up all of those categories that I had found, and it was in like the tens of thousands of searches a month, I thought, well, I don't, even if I get just a tiny percentage of those people to my site, I can either sell advertising, which is a business I had been in before, at the newspaper, or I could, use my product to try to sell it to people. So I felt like the thing that I validated first that was really helpful for me was, like, there is a way for me to get people to my business,
Okay.
and there's enough people interested in something around this space that I thought I could siphon off some of those people to pay me money.
So you actually that's interesting. You actually validated that there's actually a market. Okay.
Yeah.
Very cool.
And then once I saw that there was a market, I got pretty excited about that. And so I built, like, then I started just using the AI model and just, like, let's try to make some coloring pages, and let's see, let me get the prompt right. Let me figure out how to tune it or whatever. and I got it to a point where I was like, okay, this is decent. Then I, sat down the next time Isaac came to me and he said, I want to color a page. I was, oh, well, what do you want? Let's make anything, and let's see how it turns out. And they weren't, it was 2023. They weren't great at the time, but it was more fun than browsing on Google. And he had a good time with it. And even like the mess ups, he thought it was funny, oh, Spider-Man's got 3 arms. Like, how silly is that? It was like that kind of stuff didn't bother him that
But
much.
could he actually then get Spider-Man with I forget what the thing was with the
Yeah,
leopard
we
and
had like Spider-Man riding on a dinosaur. That was one, so it was hard to get 2 subjects together, but you could put characters in interesting places or doing interesting things.
okay.
Um, it was hard to get, like, if you like, sometimes if I did Spider-Man and a dinosaur, like, the dinosaur would also be wearing a Spider-Man costume. So it's kind of weird. But it was good enough, and there wasn't anything better at the time either, It was like that was the state of the art at the time. So I put up a little landing page, where people could do that, use the you could type in their prompt, and then I would send it through my system, and then they'd get a coloring page that they could download. And I shared it with like some family. I think somebody posted it on Facebook or something, and I put like a little credit system. Like you could pay $10 or $15, and you get some credits to make more coloring pages. And I remember somebody that I didn't know spent $15 on it, and
Yeah.
it
Well,
wasn't like my mom. I mean, my mom did eventually buy it also, a big supporter, but it
what
was
was
like.
that like when you're first I mean, did you get an email or what?
Yeah, I
Like,
got an email that I had my first transaction, and it was $15, and it was like, I don't know who this is. I don't even know who they knew that, got them to Color Bliss. And
yeah.
it was like that was an amazing feeling. I'd never really done that before, where I like had a software product that somebody, like a stranger, that I didn't do outreach to or anything like that. They just came and saw it and like, yeah, I wanna try this. So I thought, hey, there's that was enough for me to, like, okay, somebody would pay for this. Like, how many other people would pay for it?
Yeah. And then what so how long did it take for the next order to come through?
Um, I think like a couple came through that week or something like that. I think I launched on Product Hunt and I got some traffic to the site that way. Um, and then so I think in that first month, I think I made $100 or something like that, in sales, and I think I spent. Oh, and I did some advertising on Pinterest also to get some traffic to the site. So I think made $100 and spent like $300 or $200, something like that. So I wasn't profitable, but it was like I just wanted to get people to it to see if I got people to it, would a percentage of them buy, and then I could focus later on getting them cheaper or getting more people or whatever.
Yeah. And so you validated the market, that there was a market because you're getting customers, and then you validated your product, like, hey, the product works, like people can actually procure coloring pages.
Yeah.
And then so I guess scaling, would you call it scaling, or you went into full production mode or
Yeah, I think at that point I realized like, oh, I didn't have like a login system or anything. Like, it was all front. It was all a front end. There was no back end to it. Like, you couldn't
okay.
log in, you couldn't manage your credits. Like, even if like you logged in or if you went to the site on a different browser, like your credits were only on the browser that you paid for.
Oh, okay. So
Like, it
it's
was
pretty
really, it was
MVP,
very.
minimal viable product. Yeah. So okay.
So then I spent after I got, that after that first month, I thought, okay, I need an account system where people can log in and, buy more credits and that kind of thing. And with that, I added a subscription. So you could either buy a subscription or you could buy credits. And I didn't really know what people would pay for. And I feel like my leaning was like people don't like subscriptions. They'd rather just do one time stuff. But
Yeah.
then what I found was that 70-80% of the time people would do the subscription instead. And that was surprising to me. And when I did the subscription, I also offered like a yearly plan. So I was like, oh, you could buy $10 of credits or $5 a month or $49 for a year or something like that.
Yeah.
And then I had a couple people pick like the yearly option. And I thought, oh, cool. Like, I just made $100 in a day or something like that because 2 people picked the yearly thing. And that felt like magic.
Yeah, that's awesome. And that's, in talking to you before, like it sounds like you're doing a lot of experimenting with this
Yeah.
and seeing what works and what doesn't.
Hmm. Yeah, that's I try to just have that was the thing that probably I took the most away from working at Gatsby, was Zach, the CEO there. Zach Locker was just try things and see if it works, and then if it doesn't, move on to the next thing, and if it does, like, oh, you just learned something new and very valuable.
Yeah. Awesome. All right. So based on your vision, 20 hours a week and making enough money. Have you realized it?
Yeah. Yeah, I think when I set out, it was 2023. I gave myself a year to kinda to do that, and now it's been 2 years, and so I didn't run out of money, and I didn't have to go get a job. I am doing some freelancing, in addition to working on Color Bliss, but also, over the summer, Color Bliss got to the point where it's making enough. I mean, we had a baby this year, so, we spent a lot of money and, on a baby,
Yeah,
and
babies are expensive.
yeah, and we're making I think as in the first few months, especially in the first year, but especially in the first 6 months, it was really easy to kind of laser in of like, yeah, like pull everything back to a bare minimum. Like we're not gonna go to restaurants and we're gonna, not spend money.
Yeah.
And what I found was as I started making more money, what I realized was I kind of had this runway, I was like, oh, I can spend $6,000 a month, and then I'll run out of money at the end of 12 months. Well, I realized when I started making $3,000 a month that now my runway is 2 years instead of 1 year. And then when I made up that $4,000 a month, then my runway, stretched out even farther and
Yeah.
even farther. And so I
So you
realized
so
that,
you knew your financial runway, or okay,
yeah,
you modeled that out.
yeah. So at the beginning, every month, at the end of the month, I would say, okay, how much do we spend? What's our average, spend for the last 3 months? How much did I make over the last 3 months? And then, if that average holds true, how far is our, how much savings do we have left, and how long will our runway last?
Yeah.
When it got to the point when it was like over 4 years or something like that, then I was like, okay, I'm not worried about that anymore.
Infinite. It's like
Yeah,
you can do this forever.
yeah.
But how about, so I'm curious, how about the 20 hours vision? Are you locked into that, or do you find yourself working 30, 40, 50 hours, or is it
It's pretty stable. I mean, 20 hours. I think if you actually averaged out how many hours I work in a year, it would end up being less than 20 hours a week.
really?
Um, yeah, because like I work 20 hours a week, and then sometimes we go on vacation, or we do a trip or whatever like that. Or I mean, I took a whole month off basically for the baby this year,
Oh,
and I
nice.
just I just did support basically.
Okay.
It was like I think I did 30 minutes a day or something like that, while I was off. And so, um, I have some weeks where I work more, but I don't know that I've worked over 30 hours. Maybe like a week or two before the baby came. I worked pretty heavy to try to like get prepped for that. But
You had a really tough 40-hour week.
yeah.
That way.
I mean,
Okay.
it's also silly, but like I found pretty quick once I switched to the 20-hour week that like my brain was pretty toast
Yeah.
like after 4 hours. And I think part of it has to do with like I also just really lock in for 4 hours. Like I'm not when you work an 8-hour day at a company, it's like, oh yeah, I got a meeting over here and I got to do that. I got to check the email. You do that, and it's like it's not all, super productive all the time. And so I did find, when I looked at my managerial schedule, I basically cut out like going to a 20-hour work week for me basically was just cutting out all meetings that I had.
I think it's interesting on the 20 hours a week. I'm similar. I actually have a vision to work 30 hours a week. Um, and my early story, and I have, and we'll get to we'll wrap up here. I'll have a final question for you. But my early start of my career is like when I worked in auditing, public accounting. I noticed people would make the week last, and it was a 50 to 60 hour culture, and like they would just stretch out the work. I'm like, this is the dumbest thing I've ever seen. And so I would work my butt off, but I would go home. I mean, and people would like look at me weird, and I'm like, I'm not playing this game. Which really brings up to me is like what I admire about what you're doing is like you're playing your own game. You're deciding, hey, this is what I want, and this is what I'm gonna do. And it's, I want to make enough money. I don't need to make 3 billion. I'm gonna work 20 hours a week because there are other things. There's life and I value. Not it. Who decided it has to be a 40-hour week?
Yeah.
And so what I notice is that, and I'm sure you do too, that, or I guess that what you do is like when you reduce your week to that and your hours, you make your hours count. You don't you don't mess around. Like you work, you freaking work, and so that you can
Yeah.
go do what else you want to do.
And I mean, and sometimes, I mean, especially, I mean, in the past few months, we're getting less sleep in my house. And so I've had weeks where it's like, oh man, I'm not sleeping at all and not getting that much done. And then I really feel it, when that is the time that I have allotted, like if I don't get it done, then I feel super pinched for time. Uh,
Yeah.
I've also found, I mean, I think this is, it's kind of what you're saying also is like, you can make the work, like the work will always stretch to fill the bucket of time that you let it fit. And the other thing that I found is like my to-do list always gets bigger.
Hmm.
There's always something else I could work on.
Yeah.
And so like the time that I say like that's enough is completely arbitrary and up to me because it's never going to be enough. My software is never going to be perfect. Every customer is not always going to be happy. There's always going to be something I can improve. There's always another blog post to write or email to send or whatever. So at some point, you just have to get comfortable saying that was enough for today, and I'll do the thing again tomorrow.
Yeah. Perfect. I mean, it's a beautiful forcing function of like prioritize, make what counts, and but call it a day.
Yeah,
When you hit your 4 hours or your whatever 5 hours because you do 4 days. Anyway, all right. So then, uh, our listeners tuning into this conversation, and they're in a position where they're like, "Oh crap, I'm in the pancake. I'm in middle management or whatever," and I'm like, "Gosh, I would love to do what something like Ben's doing." I mean, you've spoken a lot to your story. I think there's a lot of advice already baked in, but what advice would you give that person who, again, what we're about is helping entrepreneurs build what matters, both in business and in life, and you're a outstanding example of that. So, what advice would you give?
yeah. I mean, one thing that I see some people do that I feel sad for them, and I don't mean that in like a condescending way, but like people will leave a job to start their own business and then create their own prison
Yeah.
around them.
Mhm.
They'll create a business that doesn't serve their happiness. And so I think what's been so helpful for me was before I started and kind of how I got to this point was I sat down and I got this from a book called The Pathless Path, but I think he got it from Ramit Sethi, who is like a personal finance writer.
Yeah.
How to Teach You to Be
Yeah.
Rich, I think was his book. But he had this question of just like, what is your rich life? And just spend time thinking about that. And it was really that question that made all the difference for me because when I wrote down what actually makes me happy,
Yeah.
it was it wasn't necessarily the money. um it was the time, and I think that question is great because it also can be the money. Like you can write, you can put anything you want on your list, but then once you have that list, then you have the power to make that list happen.
Yeah. And
Eh,
and the concept, if I understand the concept correctly, is he's that author saying, you can live your rich life now if you really think about it.
yeah,
One of my rich life, this is an example. One of my rich life items I read I think I listened to the book, was when I get to the scrap of soap in the shower, or the end of the toothpaste where I've already murdered the toothpaste, but I'm gonna see if I can murder it a couple more times. My rich life is I just throw it away.
yeah,
I
just
don't
yeah,
try to wash my body with the scrap of soap. I just put a new bar soap in the
yeah.
shower. It's amazing freedom.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I mean, and that was my list. I mean, the list was silly. The list was like, I want to bake bread. I want to mow my lawn. I want to, have time to do, the stuff around the house that I like doing. But I think like what you're saying, it's realizing that the things that make you happy aren't as far out of your reach as you think that they are. And
Yeah.
also it brings to the focus, like we tend to think like, oh, when I'm rich, I'll do that, which means like, I will never do that.
Right.
Because I
Right.
will never be rich. It's like that's like the subconscious thinking that we all end up having. It's like one day I'll do that, but not today. And so having that list for me was really clarifying of, I think that was the foundation for me of figuring out, okay, well, what do I want to do next? And how much money do I need to do the things that I want to do? And
Okay.
how much time do I need to spend on those things?
Mention the title and the author again of that.
It was, I mean, Ramit Sethi wrote "I Will Teach You to Be Rich," and then I came through that a different way from Paul Millard, who wrote a book called The Pathless Path.
Pathless Path. Got
Yeah.
it. Yeah, both great books. I've actually just listened to a podcast with the second guy on there.
Mhm.
All right, so where can people find you to connect or and buy coloring pages?
If you want to buy coloring pages for yourself or for your kids, you can go to colorbliss.com. And if you want, I do some writing on my own personal site. So it's at ben.robertson.is is my personal site. And I kind of took a break, but lately in the past month or so, I've been becoming a little bit, in the fall, I usually become a little bit more pensive and retrospective and stuff. So I've been writing some things about what I've learned, and
Because that's
you know,
when you're reading Walton.
exactly. Yeah. It's that
Yeah.
time of year.
There
Yeah.
you go. Are you gonna branch out and read anything else, or are you just gonna stick with Walton?
It actually has been a long time since I've read Walden, so it's probably time, for another year. I've been doing this for 2 years now, so there's probably a lot of cruft, I can cut out of my life, and all this stuff. So move on
Very,
forward.
very nice. Well, Ben, thank you so much for sharing an hour. We've been at this for an hour now, sharing an hour of your 20-hour week with me. And I greatly appreciate it. And man, what a great story. And you're still living it, of course. But I think I'm inspired. I know it's going to be an inspiration to the listeners too. Like you can create what matters. You can craft it, and you're living proof that you've done that. So
Yeah.
thank you for coming on.
Well, thanks for having me, and thanks for helping me, take the first steps on that journey way back when.
Yeah. Very cool. Glad to be part of the story. All right. Well, thank you all, and we'll be back for another episode of Made to Matter. So I hope to see you soon. You can find me at madetomatter.coach, and also on LinkedIn at Adam Landrum. So take care.